This is my first organ with the Sound of Steam mod. I picked out all the sounds I wanted and then I designed it so that you could see every organ. And each note has its own individual redstone link, which means to play a lot of notes, you need to trigger a lot of redstone links. I really do like this. It gives you a lot of flexibility and is beneficial when you want different organ sounds to play different things, but I did end up avoiding a few of the unique mechanics within Sound of Steam, and some of those mechanics make your life a lot easier. So today I want to explore those and build a new organ. So I've been looking into the other parts of the Sound of Steam mod. Now, this is the keyboard relay and the stop master. I won't be using those today. Those are where you want to take a MIDI output from something like a MIDI keyboard and perform in-game. So we won't be using this, but we will be using the Windchest controller and the Windchests. So that's what we have here. This is the Windchest controller. These are the Windchests, and you'll notice this is what we have the organs sitting on, instead of being on the tanks above the magma blocks. They are just sat on top of the Windchest. This is the Windchest controller, and this is actually an encased fan, so from the Create mod. And I've just used a creative motor to power this. Now, the special thing about this is if we start playing something very simple, we've done the same concept here where we just have the redstone links on receiver mode with a different programming in each one. So when the signal goes around, every time it powers a link, it will also play the organ. But the cool thing here is we can turn it off. So these signals are still being powered, these are still being received, you can see them come in here, but the organs are not playing. So this is what is called a stop, I believe, in real-world organ terms. But what that means for me is that we can control which organs play at which times, which means we don't need a really complex array of one redstone link for every single possible note. We maybe just need one redstone link for each note in each section. So we could do like a bass section and a melody section. And then we have multiple instruments and we can turn them on and off at any point during a performance. Now, one thing I do want to test, is there a limit to how far these can come across? So we needed to have these arrows facing in to the Windchest controller, and if I activate this, yes. So I'm guessing this is a full octave. That is 13. Yeah, so that will be F sharp to F sharp. So if we come back to this organ, you know, if we had a section like this, we would just need to get rid of the gap and then we would be able to play all of these notes. A section like this, if we choose to have two sections combined, we will probably need a Windchest controller on each side, but that is absolutely fine. And then I want to show the main benefit of this. So if we put another one of these down, so now what I've done here is we have the exact same redstone links that we have here, but playing a different instrument, but it's the same pitch. So it's the third octave and the same notes that will be played. So if we start this redstone off again, we can activate this Windchest controller to play the first instrument, and then we can activate this one, and both will play. And then we can choose to remove this one, and we've just got the trumpet playing. So the main benefit of doing this is you improve the programming. So here we are only playing one redstone link at any time, but we are actually playing two of the organs. And maybe we actually want these links to be on all 9 organ sounds. Again, we will only need one link here in order to play all 9 sounds. Now, there is one main problem that I have with this process, and it's the reason that I avoided it the first time round when building this organ. And that is, let's say that we have a stop per octave here. So let's say every octave here is controlled by a different Windchest controller, and we activate this section here. Maybe I have a bass section which uses this note here, which I wouldn't mind adding to the bass section, but I also have a melody which dips down and plays this note here. What that's going to do is, if I enable this entire section, then the bass is going to work how I want. It's going to play this note whenever this note comes up, but the melody is also going to randomly play this note whenever it dips down to this level. It's not going to play the rest of the melody because this octave is not going to be enabled, but this octave is going to be enabled, so we're going to get a random toot at part of the melody. And from my experiments of doing music in Minecraft, even if you change the key that music is in, most music and most melodies and most bass lines and most chord progressions, they exist over multiple octaves. It's very difficult to keep anything within, a set of 12 notes. So the way that I want to set this up is, I think I want to have a bass section and I want to have a melody section, and we will utilize the stops to unlock an entire instrument, right? So we've got the diapason here, which is like the main organ sound. If I want that to play, the whole thing will be unlocked for the melody machine. But if I want to use some of these notes in the bass section, I will build a separate one of these, maybe for the bottom 2 octaves, and have another stop for those in the bass section. So the same for the trumpet. If we listen to some of these lower notes, this could really add some nice texture to the bass section. So I think I would want these in the background as a stop that we can enable purely for the bass section, but also the full 5 octaves will be available as a stop for the main melody machine. And the last thing that I think I want to include here is the Vox Humana here that I had at the top. My main problem with this is it's not loud enough. And I don't necessarily want it to be a bass stop or a melody stop. I want this to be a choir all on its own and a main feature of the organ, because I think it sounds fantastic. And I think a lot of music that I will want to play with this might have a melody section, either a singer or a choir, that I would want to be separate to the main melody organ. So I think the plan for me is to build a choir at the very front of the organ, which will have its own controls. It won't be connected to a stop system. And then we will have a main melody section with stacks of stops behind them. And then we will have a bass section. And again, we will have some stops behind that as well. Oh, and one more thing that somebody mentioned, you can actually power these wind chests from underneath. So I think we can make things a little bit more compact as well than we did over here. And if we fast forward a few hours, you can see the organ layout has now been designed. So I'll talk you through the different parts here. To begin with, we have the choir at the front, which is just the Vox Humana organ. And the way that all of these organs work is we have the individual coding for the links, which has one colour per note. If I just come over here, this is exactly like what we did on the previous organ. So F sharp to the high F sharp, we have 13 notes, 13 colours of wool. And then for each section, we have a different block type. So if we come over here, we have the choir block type, which is kind of its own thing. We have the bass section, which is a few of these back here. And then we have the melody section, which is the rest of these back here. So the choir one is kind of its own thing. But if we come back to this one here, you can see this is one of the melody machines, where we have this amethyst coding and the instrument itself. And that code is really important because we can use this to shut off the entirety of this instrument. So if we come up to here, we can see that we have all of this coding. And so if I wanted to enable or disable all of the diapason, this instrument at the front, we can simply do that with this redstone link. Now the notes themselves all just use the amethyst. So you can actually see this link here is exactly the same as this code here. So if we had a piece of music that wanted to play this note, we could choose whether it's just this guy that plays, or these two guys, or any combination of all of these 6 guys. So we can control that by using these links. Now the base ones are on a separate code, and if you actually look down here, you can see just how compact I've managed to make this. Now, I don't think it looks as interesting as our previous design, but it is certainly more efficient. So we essentially have 10 different stops, which we can control with these links from inside here, and we can pick and choose which instruments are active or inactive just from this control panel here. Now, the idea is not necessarily that we would do this. Technically, we could have an alternating switch where within the programming itself, kind of like we did back here, you know, it could get to the end of this line and then switch on a few more instruments, get to the end of this line and switch off some instruments. It would be built into the actual programming itself. But in order to kind of demonstrate how it works and to give it more of a live performance feel, we can have the levers here. Now in this control panel, we also have some other controls. And what I've done here is I have designed something like a looping machine. Now for those who've been subscribed a while, you'll know that I have built looping machines in the past, long before I did any create mod stuff. This was with vanilla note blocks. But essentially we have 10 different sections that we can perform on this looping machine here. So instead of having a very complex pre-built programming here, we just have 10 very short sections that are all 64 redstone ticks. That's what this clock is coming around here. Every time the clock goes round, this pulses into this system. And whichever loops we have selected by activating these links here, it will then perform that music. So if you are ever building a create mod music machine in survival, I would very much recommend you go the looping route, because building something like this is obviously going to be a much, much bigger task in survival. In creative, it's not too bad, especially with world edit and schematics. You know, you can just copy and paste things. But yeah, this is a very convenient setup. But yeah, I think it's time we play some music. This is just a very simple loop that I've designed myself to test things out, but I can talk you through the process of activating these levers. So let's choose the diapason, probably the most basic of the organs, and let's have the melody chords. And there we go. It's very soft. But we can add to this. Now the interesting thing here with these update in real time. So the moment I pull this lever, it's going. However, these loops will move the target block down the moment I select them, but they will only begin on the next cycle. So let's say we want this melody here. we need a bass instrument to come in. So let's choose this lever and this one. And there we go. It's a lot of fun to play around with. I definitely want to explore this kind of, manually controlled DJing of loops in the future. But I will also be using this organ for some more controlled music and prepared redstone as well. This mod has so much potential and I'm having a lot of fun playing around with it. So I do recommend you check out the Sound of Steam mod if you've not given it a try yourself. And if you do make anything with this, please do share it with me. You can join my Discord and share it in some of our channels there. I'm very curious to see what other people are doing with this mod and with note blocks in general. And if you do join the Discord, I've started doing 2 weekly puzzles that are Minecraft themed, just a little bit of fun for people to enjoy every week. But that's it from me. If you have any recommendations for music to cover with this amazing mod, please let me know. I've been writing down all the recommendations and picking out the best ones for the future. But thank you very much for watching and take care.